You're watching Newport News TV, covering Newport News like no one else.
This is not the end of an experience. This is a training ground for the future. And we have stimulated this kind of interest and this kind of activity, not only in the future of Newport News, but in the future of the peninsula.
Because, you know, buildings don't solve problems, people do. And these young people are our future.
Communities are built by people. They're built by people who are engaged, people who care, people who understand that life is about more than themselves, but about others.
And as I am fond of saying, Newport News is just a great place to work and do business and live and raise a family.
And I particularly am grateful to have the honor to continue representing you as mayor and watching this city grow and prosper as it has.
Life is an exciting journey, full of ups and downs, twists and turns, hopes and dreams, and the pure amazement of watching each year go by faster and faster. But through it all, it's very important to remember, it's not how much time you have, it's what you do with it. And over the course of his life, Mayor Joe Frank has indeed made the most of it by simply devoting himself to the city he truly loves, not to mention born and raised in. Maturing as a young man through the Newport News public school system, rising through the ranks of the Boy Scouts of America to obtain the rank of Eagle Scout, putting himself through college and eventually law school at the University of Virginia, representing countless number of clients as a very prominent lawyer, accepting the challenge of becoming a public servant as a city councilman, and eventually the first directly elected mayor of Newport News. But at the root of all of his accomplishments and achievements lies the gentle, caring man that he is, and the qualities of a leader with a tireless work ethic and a clear vision that has helped to make his tenure as our mayor one to remember, full of success, pride, and ultimately helping to position the city for greater things to come as we set our sights on the future. So, as he turns the page on this chapter of his life and on to the next, where he plans to spend more time with his family, we at Newport News Television are proud to bring you Mayor Joe Frank in his own words, as he reflects on his life, his leadership, and the legacy he leaves behind over a very impressive career as a public servant and most notably as the mayor of the City of Newport News.
Well, of course, I was born here, and so this city is not anything like it was when I was a kid growing up. Back then, the city was 4 square miles, 40,000 people or so. And pretty much everybody either worked for the shipyard or for businesses that did business with the shipyard. Fort Eustis was, of course, in Warwick County. And so we had basically one business, lots of retail on Jefferson Avenue and Washington Avenue. The businesses along West Avenue serviced the shipyard. And we had two hospitals, Riverside on 50th Street and what was then called Buxton, which later became Mary Immaculate on Chesapeake Avenue. So it was a small community, good school system. Kids from Warwick and Hampton used to pay tuition to come to Newport News Public Schools. And pretty much everybody knew everybody. Nobody ever locked a door that I knew. And you could walk up and down Washington Avenue and go into a store and take something, and when your parents came in the week after, or 2 weeks after that, the clerk would say, you know, Joe got a whatever, and they'd pay for it. And so it was a whole different world than, of course, it is today. Very little in the way of the arts or culture, and it was clearly what people refer to as a blue-collar community. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to college and attended the University of Virginia and stayed there for 7 years, undergraduate school and law school, and came back home in 1967. And at that time, I sort of looked around and said, you know, if this community doesn't find a way to transform itself, become less dependent on the shipyard, even though we remain dependent on the shipyard. It's still our biggest taxpayer. And if we didn't diversify our employment opportunities, this community really didn't have much of a future. Back in those days, if the shipyard had a lull in their business, they'd lay people off. And those people couldn't find other jobs because there weren't any. And so they'd be unemployed until the shipyard picked back up, and then they could re-employ the same people they had laid off. And so you had an economy that went up and down based on the success of the shipyard. And of course we had the C&O Railroad, now CSX, and they employed some people, and there was a small port operation. They employed some longshoremen. So we had a tax base that was really extraordinary for a small town, that allowed the community to do a lot of things. We always had good schools, as I've said, that other communities our size might not have been able to do. But when I came back from law school and began to practice law, I got involved in a variety of organizations. I'm Jewish, so I was involved in the Jewish community and the JCs and some charitable kind of things, as well as trying to build an active law practice. And married. My first wife died when she was, I think, 27, and remarried my present wife. We've been married, Jane Susan and I will be 36 years in May this month. And we have 3 kids and 7 grandkids, which are the joy of my life. And so we have seen this community change dramatically. Early on, I was fond of saying that you couldn't aspire to be a great city if you didn't have a great university. And things coincided, and Paul Tribble came along when I became mayor, and Newport became a great modern urban university. Brings a lot to the community in terms of students, in terms of faculty, in terms of athletics and cultural events. And the Ferguson Center was built, and great performances come to the community. When I was growing up, and we didn't have access to any of that. Early in my years back here in the community, we traveled to Washington to go to the Kennedy Center to see things, or to Norfolk to scope for activities. But now we have them here for our citizens. They don't have to travel. The business opportunities are enormous. We've had the Jefferson Lab, which brings a huge amount of reputation in the scientific world to our community, as does NASA Langley and Hampton. And many, many businesses have grown up here because of Jefferson Lab, the university, the shipyard, and the military. Beyond that, we have created a much more diverse tax base and employment base. Cannon and Continental, the military continues to grow here. We've had substantial success through the BRAC rounds, the base realignment and closure rounds, and keeping military facilities here rather than losing them to other places, and bringing in from other places a number of new activities on the military bases. So Fort Eustis continues to grow and will continue to do that as time goes on. Shipyard continues to prosper, building carriers and submarines, as everyone knows. Continental is coming back because the automobile business, which is their main customer, is beginning to turn around even in this very difficult economy that we're in. Cannon has just completed a year ago a $750 million or so investment in plant and equipment to build cartridges for copiers, and ultimately they will hire another 1,300 people for those jobs. So there's lots of things happening that give people opportunity. And I think people in Newport News have a lot to be happy about and to look forward to. I think that the community has a very bright future because we have a solid base to build on. And there are medical facilities that we enjoy, Riverside, Bon Secours, Centara. All of those bring a quality of life to the community that many other communities just don't have in the way that we do. And as people get older, they like to be nearer excellent medical facilities. So I think that we'll see people coming back to the community who may have left for other reasons when they were younger, come back as they're older, and it's important that we maintain those quality medical services for our citizens. Clearly our young people need the best schools, and I think that the school system has improved over time. There's still a lot that needs to be done, but there have been a lot of improvements in our schools. The magnet schools that have been implemented really do give children an opportunity that they hadn't had before. As an aside, I am worried that as science and technology continue to improve and change our lives, that we make sure that our population has job opportunities, that they don't get replaced by computers and robots, and that education that is lifelong is just important for people to be able to adapt to an ever-changing technological, scientifically based society as those things continue to improve, and to assure that people have work to do so they can support a family and buy a home and buy a car and send their kids to school and those kind of things. And I think we have to be mindful of the challenges that technology poses as well as the opportunities that technology brings. So those are the kinds of things that I see that have, one, transformed us, and two, changed us over the many years that I've been walking these streets and riding these roads.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Joe Frank. Talk about a grand entrance. Look at the mayor now.
You know, it's been a work of joy. I've said that countless times. I have loved every day of this job. I have met people I'd never meet any other way. I've learned about things that I never would have learned about any other way. The responsibility of mayor of a small community like ours, it's not so small anymore, 193,000 people, is really enormous. And in my sense, and people can do the job differently than I did it and be successful. I don't pretend or suppose that I have any magic approach to any of this stuff, but you know, my sense is that people elect you to provide leadership and to provide vision and to provide direction. And sometimes they agree with you and sometimes they don't, and that's the great part about a democracy. Everybody's entitled to their opinions and to their perspectives, and I respect that. But you have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to, as a leader, look over your shoulder and make sure people are following, because otherwise you're not leading. And doing that, engaging the public, being involved, trying to go everywhere that I'm asked as much as I possibly can do that, has given me a sense of what the public expects and what they need and what they want, and then I try to articulate how we can go about getting those things done. And this has absolutely not been, in my mind, about me. I have never aspired to public office. In fact, when I was first approached about running, I told the people that came that my mother didn't raise any dumb children, and I had no intention of doing this. And I've sort of been of that view ever since. I say to my wife every now and then that if people want to be good to me, they'll vote for me, and if they want to be very good to me, they won't. But if you take the job and people entrust you with the job, and that's what this is, you know, I view it as a civic responsibility that all of us have to contribute to the world that we were brought into. And I think all of us have an obligation, to the extent of their ability and their skill and their training and their education, to make a contribution in some way or another. I've been privileged to be able to do it as a mayor. And So what you do is try to identify those components that have to come together to make the whole work, to build the kind of community that I frequently describe, and others have taken up the message, where people want to live, learn, work, and raise a family. Because if you create those conditions and you do those things necessary to make that environment happen, you have to deal with the arts and culture and roads and airports and air service and transportation issues and education and medical care and job creation and job growth and stability, address the environmental issues, make sure that we're living in a healthy environment, that we have adequate water sources, not just for us, but for our children and their children. All of those are components. You can't make it work, by picking and choosing one or the other. All of those elements and more need to come together if a community is going to thrive and prosper. And to understand those elements, understand how they work, what it is you have to do with the Congress to get a military base, the resources and the assets they need to be competitive in the military, as well as to provide for the national defense. To look at what the universities need to help them thrive and prosper from the state and other sources or from local government. To look at the medical community and try to make sure that we have the best talent, the best experience and facilities that we can get. To create neighborhoods that work and that maintain themselves and that they don't deteriorate. All of those things come together, trying to address crime and public safety and, as I've said, public education. There's no one piece to this that's a magic bullet that's a cure-all. It's a combination of all of those things that make what we call a city. And it's doing together collectively as a community those things that make things happen and make for success that we can't do separately. When I go and talk to the children in school, I ask them, how many of you have a fire engine at home? Well, surprisingly, a few of them raise their hand, but I think they'd raise their hand to anything. But I explained to them that the reason we have government is because not everybody can afford to have a fire engine at home. So we pay taxes, and collectively we buy a fire engine to meet the collective need. But the point of that observation is simply that a community thrives and prospers when the citizens come together with common goals. In this day and age, that is very, very difficult to achieve. There are so many people from diverse backgrounds, experiences, economic situations, educational experiences, that people have different values, they have different perspectives, they have different experiences in life that form their judgments. And so being able to articulate goals and opportunities, risks, that people can understand and relate to and can set aside their differences and come together for the common good is, I think, the primary challenge of public office in this day and age. And I've been very fortunate in being able to, sort of, as I said earlier, look over my shoulder and find that most people are there and supportive and encouraging and offering their friendship and their energy. So it's been just a wonderful experience, and I've been grateful for the privilege and the opportunity every day. And at the end, you hope that the efforts that you made, and I put in an enormous amount of time in doing this, make somebody's life a little better and give young people a sense of hope and opportunity, and that people feel that they're better off. I am encouraged today because I believe that Newport News has a very exciting future. My hope is that after today's summit, you too will share this optimism and our aspirations for ensuring that this city will always be a great place to live, work, learn, and raise a family. And so I stand before you this morning, proud of our past, confident of our future. That confidence is firmly planted in the policies we have established, the strong economic base that we enjoy, and the undeniable belief that we are ready for our future. Thank you very much. One of my favorite expressions is that, a favorite story is that there's a child riding in the car with a mother, driving down a road, passes a fence, and sees a fence post, and on the fence post, a turtle. And he turns to his mother and says, "Mommy, how'd that turtle get on that fence post?" And the mommy looks at the little boy and says, "Well, son, I'm not exactly sure, but the one thing I'm certain about is it didn't get there by itself." So you build on what all of those people that come before you have accomplished and achieved and contributed. Nobody gets things done by themselves. It's a collaborative effort with support from the citizens, city staff. We have an outstanding city staff, great group of people. I've served with wonderful people on our city councils who really get it and who are committed and are caring, and we've been very fortunate in Newport News in the main to have those kind of people in elective service, people in the legislature who you can reach, and people in Congress that you can reach, and who are willing to help. So it really is a collaborative effort. The people here, the businesses, the schools, the university, the medical community, I mean, everybody who has a stake in a successful community that they want to live in and raise their family in joins together, for the most part, in making the kind of community that they want to live in. I've been fortunate to be able to articulate how you get there and sort of arrange things that perhaps have brought things together and made things happen. But you know, my view is it's not for me to talk about what we've accomplished. It's for other people, and whatever I've done or contributed to, I think other people have to judge. I don't think it's for me to make a list of what I'm happiest about or what I think I've achieved, because I isn't what it's all about.
Communities are built by people. They're built by people who are engaged, people who care, people who understand that life is about more than themselves, but about others. And as we go forward along this march to the future, it's important to remember that everybody has to benefit, that no part of the community can be left behind, that no age group or cultural group or ethnic group can be ignored, because communities are about people.
To be a citizen of America in a democracy requires civic participation. People have to be engaged. To sit back and let somebody else do it is not going to give people the outcomes that they need or they deserve. And so people need to be engaged. And they don't have to be engaged in public office. They can be engaged in civic organizations. They can be engaged in volunteering. They can be engaged in any number of activities through their religious organizations. But people need to accept some responsibility for their own situation, their own lives, and the community that informs the parameters of those lives. That may be a little too fancy way to say it, but what I'm saying is people have to accept responsibility for the environment that they live in, whether that's government or business or whatever it is. And we need more people to take an interest. Democracy works best, and the founding fathers were very clear about this. when citizens are informed and engage and participate. It works worse when they don't. And for too long, we've had too much divisiveness on issues that shouldn't be divisive. And we've lost the sense of civility in our public dialogue. People are not constrained in what they say and how they say it. And that's unfortunate, because to attract the kind of people to public office that people would ideally like to see in public office, the people that serve can't feel like they're constantly being attacked, and that everything they do and everything they say and everything they think is subject not only to criticism perfectly okay, but subject to, violent attack. So there needs to be a restoration of civility in public discourse. And there needs to be more public discourse and more public involvement and more public engagement. But having said those things, which are somewhat negative, I think this city has a great future. I think that we have the pieces in place, the economic base, the tax base, the diversity of employment opportunities, the educational pieces, the cultural pieces, health pieces, the systems that really do underpin a very successful community. The challenge is to maintain it, sustain it, improve it, and move it forward. Because cities can't stand still. Stagnation doesn't work. You're either moving forward or you're moving backward. So far, this city has voted to move forward. And I hope that that will be the future that we share, that our children and our grandchildren and their children will have something to look forward to, and that in each generation we will all make a contribution that makes life better for the next generation, provides more opportunities, more things to look forward to in life. And if we can do those things, we'll be successful.
And with that, Mayor Joe Frank has indeed made the most out of life by proudly serving this city and its citizens by simply leading and charting a course with a clear vision to make the City of Newport News a community on the rise and one that is well positioned for the future as it continues to provide the perfect place to live, work, play, and raise a family. So to you, Mayor Frank, thank you so much for your service. On behalf of everyone here at Newport News TV, we hope you've enjoyed the life, leadership, and legacy of our Mayor, Joe Frank.
So I am hopeful that 50 years from now, whoever's sitting in this audience and whoever's standing up here at this podium will be able to look back and say that this city has continued its vision, its dedication, its commitment to bring people together, to work hard, to build a community that will be a place where people want to live and work and get an education and raise a family. To all of you who are part of that history, we are deeply grateful. And for all of you who are a part of that future, we are even more grateful. Because while the past is important, the future is what will inform our lives and determine how we will live as citizens of this community and as Americans.